Right, hello. Don't know if anyone's here. If anyone is here, hi, where are you? Where are you watching from? I'll give people a couple of minutes to join us. If there is anyone here, let me know. It's always useful to know. Everyone's watching Joe Dale at the moment, probably. But yeah, it's always really nice to know where people are watching from as well. And I'll get started in a little while. So I'm going to be talking about exploiting one text today. I'm going to pop, France. Oh, very nice. What's the weather like in France, Annie? I'm just going to pop a couple of links in the chat. Hi, Hermione. So nice to see you. I'm glad you're here. So I am actually doing a 2-hour workshop on this topic, so diving much deeper into it. So I've put a link to that, and I've created some free Christmas resources based around the idea of exploiting one text that you can get your hands on as well. And I'm at the end of the session, I'm going to be showing you a bit about what those resources are and how I've used the whole idea of exploiting one text with those resources. So if anyone joins later, I'll keep putting those links in the chat so that people can see them. Right, I'm going to share my screen and get started. If you've got any questions or any thoughts throughout, I'm going to pop the chat here so I can see it. Oh, hold on, what have I done? Oh, right, start again. Good start. Yeah, so I've got the chat up here on my screen, so I can if you've got any questions as I'm going along, then do just put them in the chat. I'm probably more likely to see that than in the Q&A, to be perfectly honest. All right, so as I just said, I'm going to be talking about exploiting one text. For anyone who doesn't know who I am, I'm Kate Clifton. I'm probably better known as Kate Languages amongst languages teachers, particularly on Instagram and Facebook. I'm Kate Languages on those, and my website is katelanguages.co.uk. I taught French, German, and Spanish for about 8 or 9 years on and off. I say on and off because I did a master's in applied linguistics between. I taught for about 5 years, did a master's, and then taught for about another 3 or 4 years. And then in 2017, I kind of went self-employed, and I write teaching resources and I deliver CPD and teacher training, both in person, and I do lots of online training as well. I do have a podcast, and I do have an episode about exploiting one text. So if you're interested in that, then just search wherever you normally get your podcast for the Kate Languages podcast. And I am on LinkedIn as well as Kate Clifton. Okay, so what is exploiting one text? What do I actually mean by exploiting one text? So the theory behind this is basically, instead of using lots of different texts, so one text for listening and a different text for reading, and then something else to help with the speaking activity, and then something else for writing, pick one good quality text and exploit it for every skill. Now, I'm just going to say right off the bat, I haven't invented this. This is something that, talking to teachers and evolving my ideas of lesson planning and things like that over the past few years, I've kind of evolved this and really believe in it quite strongly, because I just really think that my mission in life is basically to make teachers' lives easier. And one of the ways in which you can do that is to not be scrabbling around trying to, either create lots of different texts yourself, or to be writing lots of, or finding lots of different texts for everything. So that's the basic idea behind exploiting one text. So I always say this when I'm talking to people about curriculum design, lesson planning, anything like that: start at the end. What do you want the students to produce at the end of your lesson? Or this can be done over a series of lessons. So a lot of it depends on how long your lessons are, and yeah, sort of, how in depth you want to go with everything. So it can be all done in one lesson. It could be stretched over a couple of lessons. So what do you want your students to produce at the end of the lesson or a couple of lessons? And then you work backwards from there. So you take the key, look at what the key vocabulary is. include a phonics focus, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit more detail as well. Do a listening activity, a reading and translation, and then speaking and or writing. You might not want to be doing speaking and writing. The production element of the speaking and writing, that's the thing that you need to be thinking about. So the example that I'm going to show you here and the free Christmas resources, the production, the final production element is a model answer, so a writing model answer. So the actual text that you're exploiting for all these different skills is a model answer for, and it is a GCSE style writing, but it doesn't really matter where you are and what you know, what exams you're doing or what curriculum you're teaching. At the end of the day, a good model answer is a good model answer. So yeah. And I had a really lovely comment, actually, I'll read it, on LinkedIn this morning, saying that from somebody saying that she's been using the exploit one text ideas for a while now, and I think it really helps to demystify the 90-word question for students. So anyone who's teaching GCSEs will know that 90 words, there's a 90-word question for all students to do. So apparently, yeah, she's been using this, and that it really helps with that. So it's always great to hear feedback. Right, so how does this actually work in practice? So as I've been saying, think about what type of language you want students to produce. So if it's speaking, is it going to be a role play? Is it describing a photo? Is it a short speech? Is it some kind of presentation? You know, think about what type of language you want students to produce. With writing, again, I've done the sort of, you know, the GCSE 40 or 50 words now, 80 or 90 words for the new GCSE, 150 words. Are you going to give them bullet points to answer? Is it going to be quite structured? Is it going to be a freer piece of writing? Is it going to be more of a project kind of thing? So this can work with lots and lots of different types of activity. And you can do speaking and writing from the same initial input for sure. And on my free Christmas resources, there is speaking and writing for those. So starting from the end. So the example I'm going to give today is writing about your future plans. I'm going to be doing the example in French, because in my experience, there seem to be more French teachers, I don't know. But my Christmas resources are in French, German and Spanish. And the example I'm going to give you for the Christmas resources is in Spanish. Sorry if there's any Germanists out there. All right, so starting from the end with the writing, this is what you want students to produce. So this is the writing task with 4 bullet points. This can either be in English or in your first language, or it can be in the target language. Again, some of the, you know, it depends a bit on your what exam you're teaching, and it depends on lots of factors. However you want to present how you want them to do the writing. So a writing task like this, I've done it with 4 bullet points: which compulsory subjects you're going to study and why, which optional subjects you're going to study and why. So again, this is quite English, you know, England specific. In other countries, you might not have optional and compulsory subjects. What your friend is going to study, and if you're going to do PE, and your opinion on that. So you might notice here, this is only about future plans. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to be something that includes lots of different tenses and all sorts of different things. Like, you know, whatever you want to be doing, because this is just teaching. This is not like exams. So, you know, here, your key vocabulary is your school subjects, and your key grammar point is the future, talking about future plans. All right, and I put 40 or 90 words. You might struggle to squeeze this into a 40-word answer. 90 words would be a good one for this. Okay, so here is your model answer. All right, I'm not going to read it out loud, but you've basically got 4 sentences here, including the subjects that you're going to study, so the obligatory subjects, the ones you're going to choose, and what your friend's going to do, and about PE. Okay, so I wouldn't start by giving the students those bullet points. I would start with something that is going to be based around this model answer. Okay, But I wanted to show you the bullet points first to show you that is what they're going to be doing, and this is the model answer. Okay, but I wouldn't start with that. So I would start with the key vocabulary, including a phonics focus, if that's something that you want to do. Using this text as a listening text, which can also include dictation, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment. Use it as a reading text as well. So for the listening dictation, that then becomes a transcript essentially, which then is a reading text. There's a grammar point here, as I said before, of teaching future plans, so teaching the future tense, je vais étudier, and then a speaking and or writing. And if you can do both, all the better. So the key vocabulary here is school subjects. So either introducing or practicing these however you would normally do so. You know, people present vocab in all sorts of different ways. I do actually have a digital course on my website called Structuring an Outstanding MFL lesson. And I've got a whole section on that, a whole PowerPoint on introducing vocab and different things you can do in different games and things like that. And there's a podcast episode about that as well. So if you're interested in that. And there are links to all of these things in the free Christmas resources as well, if you're interested in kind of diving a bit deeper into all of that. So this is your key vocab, introducing it however you normally do. And then we're using our model answer as, excuse me, using our model answer as a listening task. So if you are using a text that is a listening, first of all, I would make sure that you choose a listening that has a transcript, because otherwise you're going to end up having to transcribe it yourself, which can be a bit annoying. But yeah, so either you read it out loud yourself. So if it is something like this, it's a model answer where there isn't a sound file, you might have to read it out loud yourself, which is fine. If you choose something that is already a listening task, then just play the listening task however you normally would. It might even be a listening task that that's in a textbook and you've already got the questions and things like that. I really like this type of listening activity, especially in this kind of sequence, because this is very much listening for gist. Okay, so you're just listening for the general, like, what is it about in general? So the three correct statements, it's really key, I think, at this point to say you don't have to understand every single word, because you are just using this one text and going into it in a lot of depth. On the first listening, they don't need to understand every single thing about the text. So well, you've seen the model answer. You probably can't remember it. I mean, I wrote it. I still can't even, I wouldn't be able to tell it you off by heart right now. But the answers here are these three. So she's talking about future studies. Oh, sorry. She's talking about her future studies. She doesn't mention any subjects she hates. She mentions subjects she finds interesting. She talks about her best friend, but she doesn't talk about university. What is really good about this as well is that you could use those extra two pieces of information as extension things for people to add to, something else to add to their writing when they get to that part at the end. Okay, so any kind of listening task, that's just one example, and then turn it into a dictation. So a dictation can either be they write out every single word that they hear, and a lot of that depends on, like, whether you do that depends on the level of the students, how like if they're used to doing it or not. If they've never done dictation and you're suddenly introducing it, that can be quite hard. The length of the text, all sorts of things. Or you can do a gap fill like this. So I've actually taken out here school subjects. Okay, so I've taken the school subjects out of the model answer, and yeah, so as you're doing the dictation, you read it aloud, or again, you can play it, but make sure you play it, pause it, give them time to fill in the answers, rewind it, go back, and things like that. So dictation, when you're doing it in lessons as a learning exercise, is very much like do it, go back, repeat, pause, and you're working a lot with the students to actually make sure that that they are actually able to do it. So so there are two options there with the dictation, whether you want to just get them to write everything out or to do a gap fill. I've just realised I didn't mention the phonics focus, so I'm going to go back a couple of things. So I would do the phonics focus actually along with the key vocab, or even before you introduce the key vocab. The phonics focus, in some respects, it doesn't really matter what you do, but I would choose one sound symbol correspondence, one phoneme, one sound that students might struggle with, one that comes up quite a lot. So I'm, just looking at this, the N, so the nasal N in French, so the français, anglais, sciences, dessin, not technology, éducation physique. So so have that, introduce that sound, practice that sound with them, and then when you're doing the pronunciation, really just hone in and focus in on that sound. I've got the phonics focus in more detail in the Christmas resource. I'll show you that in a bit. So yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. Right, so we've done listening, so we've done phonics, key vocab, listening, dictation. We're now on to number 5, the reading. Okay, so essentially, when you've done a dictation, you now have your text written out, you have it as a transcript, and this is where they can go into even more depth. Again, I love this type of question for a reading activity. I think it's really good for comprehension. In England, I was going to say England and Wales, just England, with the newest GCSE that's going to, exams starting 2026, aren't they? All the questions and answers are going to be in English. So if you're going to be doing this with lower levels, Key Stage 3, then do the questions and answers in English. But again, it depends on your context, it depends on your students. You might want to do comprehension questions in the target language. You might want to do true or false. You might want to do correct, 5 incorrect statements about the reading task and correct them. Again, in my digital course, which is called Structuring an Outstanding MFL Lesson, there are lots of examples of reading and listening questions, different types of questions in there, and the pros and cons of a lot of those as well. I love questions in English because the next stage of this structure of a lesson is translation. Okay, and what I have found doing this type of thing with students is that when you get to the point where they can answer questions in English, it really helps them with the translation, because they've essentially already kind of translated it by the time they get to that point. So here are your answers. So they just come up nice and quickly like that. And yeah, pretty straightforward. As an extension task, you can always ask students to come up with their own questions and lots of different things like that. Okay, as a grammar point, the grammar here is really quite clear. You're talking about the future in French. So starting with what you already know, this is absolutely one of my favourite activities because of zero prep on your part. What do you already know? So you should have an idea of what they know, whether they've learnt it before, but I mean, what have they figured out already from this text? If you've never even taught it before, some of them will have already just figured it out from the text, and you can use that as a discussion. So what can you work out from the listening and reading text? What do you already know, etc. And then in a lesson, this should come up after they've done what you already know. This shouldn't already be up. So, and then just explain in a bit of and just briefly that use aller plus infinitive to talk about the future in French. And then you can go back to the text. Yeah, so then you can go back to the text and actually highlight it and look through it and things like that as well. After that read, you need to translate it into English as well after that point. Right. Then you come on to producing language. So one of the ways in which you can produce language is translation into the target language. And I think this is a really good kind of stepping stone or bridge between the kind of, you know, the passive listening and reading and giving them the language, and then actually them producing it, because you're making, you know, you're scaffolding it a lot more. It's still quite controlled. It's not just here, go off and do some stuff yourself. So I like this transition stage as well between understanding and then creating their own sentences, and then they move on to speaking and or writing. So one of the speaking things they could do is role play. So using the key vocabulary and the reading and listening text to create a short role play. They could, if you find a photo that represents the key vocab, and again, like with everything, don't reinvent the wheel all the time. There are so many resources out there where you know, you can find stuff that fits in really, really well with this. My Key Stage 3 resources, for example, follow this type of thing, and there's always a photo or two as well for each topic. So yeah, so don't be going, you know, trying to find photo, and sometimes photos don't fit with every single topic that you're going to be doing as well. And then, as I've mentioned, a writing task. So give students 2, 3, 4, 5, because in the new GCSE, one of them, there are 5 bullet points in one of them, based on the text, to create their own piece of writing. So if we then go back to the end, writing 4 bullet points, and as I keep saying, that text that you have done throughout the lesson contains answers to each of these bullet points, and they're really clearly answered. And so what you can do with this is you can get them to use the writing or the listening text, you know, the model answer, as a writing frame. So even potentially, so I keep going backwards and forwards in my PowerPoint here because there's so many different so many different bits. Even potentially using this gap fill dictation as a bit of a writing frame, and they just fill in the blanks as something a bit different, something that's true for them. So they're not even actually again, this is, you know, much more controlled and less challenging for students who might struggle to just go off and write their own stuff without really any help, or, you know, without a writing frame. So, and the reason I'm going back to show you this is to say again, it's all about making life as easy as possible for you. So you're not going, oh gosh, I've got to write a sentence builder or a new writing frame or something completely different. Like, use stuff you've already done. There's nothing wrong with giving them this and just saying, right, fill in some blanks, and just change it a bit to make it true for you. As go back to the here, sorry. As you can see, this is just about future plans. For some students, a really great extension task when they have written a good, so get them to do this properly first, and, you know, check it, get them to redraft it, make it look really, really good, and really accurate. And then as an extension task, they can talk about what they study at the moment and what their opinions are of that. So you're getting present tense in there, and even thinking, what was their favourite subject when they were in primary school? So you've got past tense in there, and extend it potentially to a longer paragraph. So that in a nutshell is exploiting one text. I'm going to leave this on here for a second. I'm going to just, can I copy this again? Yeah. So if there's anybody who's joined who didn't see, I've just put the link in the chat again, and that QR code should send you straight to download the free Christmas resources. And I put the link in the chat to the CPD that I'm doing on the 3rd of February. Now, I'm going to go out of here, And what I'm going to do now, because I've got plenty of time to do this, I'm going to talk you through now the Christmas lesson, okay? Just to show you really quickly, at the bottom here, there's lots of, on every slide, there's sort of a bit of an explanation of what to do and some links to some different things, okay? So let me just check, right, there's no question, anything else in the chat? No, okay, that's fine. So I'm going to basically talk you through how I would teach this particular lesson. And in fact, I probably will teach this lesson because I don't teach children anymore, I teach teachers, and I teach a few Spanish. So I think I might teach this with my people who are learning Spanish with me. So first of all, key vocabulary. I'm hoping, no, that doesn't. Right, it should come up automatically, but I'm quite glad it's not doing that right now. Okay, so I've got some key vocab here that the students might want to use that's in the text. Again, introducing it however you would normally introduce language. So going through the pronunciation, practicing it. I absolutely love crosswords. Again, so I keep advertising to everything that I'm doing, but I've just got so much stuff going on all the time at the moment. I'm also doing another free workshop about starters, fantastic starters in MFL. So if you want some ideas of how to start your lessons, introducing vocab, that kind of stuff, and it's a show and tell, so it's not just me talking for hours and hours. There's some brilliant people doing that, like Dodell and Susie Buell and various other people who are going to be doing that. So anyway, right, that's on the 2nd of December and that's free on the website. Sign up on my website. Okay, yeah, so introducing vocab however you would normally do that. Phonics focus. So as I'm looking at that vocab, there are lots of different things that could come up. You could have that kind of soft D at the end of Navidad. The R was one that I was like, there's quite a lot of R's in here. You could have the sound for celebrar, recibir. There are lots of different ones, and I don't think there's ever one correct phonics focus to have. So I've gone for the letter R. So listen and try to repeat the sound. So I do actually. Oh, it is on there.
Celebrar.
I don't know if you can hear
me. Dar.
Yeah, computers.
Regalo. Árbol.
Oh, I don't know what's happened there. Okay. So listen and yeah, that's what I did. So sorry, I'm just trying to remember what that was. Yeah, so listening to the sound, the R sound, and then also the double R, so the difference between the R and the R. So I had great fun making this. I think you can almost hear me laughing a little bit there. So this is essentially sort of, talking to the students and just doing that and getting them to try and practice. And the R and the R are really good fun, and you can have quite a lot of fun practicing that. So that's what I mean by phonics focus. And then drawing attention to the words in the key vocab that contain that sound. And then throughout the lesson, when they're doing speaking and things like that, just focus on that sound, that they are getting that sound right. Obviously, if they're saying celebrar instead of celebrar, then you might want to pick up on that as well. But yeah. So then we have, again, so I've done it very similar. Then we have listen and choose the 3 correct statements. So I've got the Me encanta la Navidad. I'm not going to play it all, so that's me speaking Spanish. So you can play that or you can read it yourself. And then you've got Me encanta la Navidad. You've got the 3 answers there. It does play automatically if you just click. So again, as I explained, the reason why I really like these is because you're listening for gist. Okay. Then we've got dictation. So either writing down exactly what you hear. Now I will actually just go back. I've recorded this twice, and I just wanted to show you the difference between the speed for listening and the speed for a dictation, which I think is quite different.
Me encanta la Navidad. El año pasado recibí un móvil nuevo y muchos libros.
Okay.
¿Por qué?
And then if I click through to the dictation,
Me encanta la Navidad. El año pasado recibí un móvil nuevo y muchos libros. ¿Por qué?
okay, so and I split the text up into 3 separate paragraphs here as well. And with that, I would pause it, go backwards, you know, repeat, go back and forth until they're able to write it down. Now I'll just stop that, and then yeah, so then you've got each one.
Este año.
So then that's that bit. So don't show them the text before you've actually played sound files. The way that I've done this is you do one paragraph at a time, and then it all comes up and you can check it. I mean, this could take quite a long time in a lesson, so it depends on how long you've got. So this is like the full dictation, and then you do have the option here to do it as a gap fill. So a lot of this, as I always say, depends so much on your students, depends on how much time you've got, depends on their prior knowledge. You could do the first paragraph as a full dictation, and then after that do the gap fills, you know, lots of different possibilities. Again, so much just depends on your context and timings and your students. I mean, they could get extremely bored of doing like 3 paragraphs like that as dictation, but they might absolutely love it. I know I would have done when I was a student. I would have really enjoyed it. So yeah, so that's that bit. So we've gone from the listening to the dictation again.
Me encanta
Right, shush.
la Navidad. Pasado año.
Stop. Right, if you click too much, all of the sound files start at once, just to be aware of that. So yeah, right. Then going back to the phonics focus. So you can see this lesson has got the phonics focus in more depth than previous PowerPoint that I just showed you. I just really wanted to show you this in a bit more depth. So which words contain the R sound? Sadly, there aren't any double R's in this. I realised after I did it, I should have added some double R's in there, but never mind. So anyway, there's so many. And then go through it and practice the pronunciation of each of these words. And get them to practice it. There are other things that you can do with phonics and with things like this. So at this point or later on, maybe even as a retrieval another time, doing it as a kind of like a read aloud / dictation in pairs. So if anybody's attended or subsequently watched back my phonics CPD that I did last month, I talked about this so you've got a text like this, split it in half. Student A has the first half as the full text and the second half as gap fill. Student B has the first half as gap fill and the second half as the full text. Student A reads the first half of the text while student B fills in the gaps. I mean, if they want to get like really advanced, they could even do that as a full dictation as well. So you just give them the opposite parts of the text. But yeah, so they fill it in, and that's really, really good for getting them to practice reading aloud, pronouncing things really, really well, and yeah, and listening and then writing it down and stuff like that. So it practices both of those skills at the same time. I'm going to be really annoying now and go back, because the thing I wanted to point out here as well is that all of these words contain the R sound. So your gaps here have got the phonics focus of the R. So think about that as well. So in the other example I had, the gaps were the key vocabulary of the school subjects. Here it's your phonics focus. So don't just do random gaps. Think about which gaps you actually you know, what you're actually doing. Do you want to focus in on the phonics? Do you want to focus in on a particular grammar point, particular vocab point, whatever? Right, let's go through all of those. Right. Okay, so once again, we've done our vocab, phonics, listening, dictation, onto the reading. I've done similar types of questions here, questions and answers in English. And as an extension, think of 2-3 more questions to ask the class about the text. So that's what I mentioned in the previous, with the previous PowerPoint as well, very, very similar. With this one, I've done a terrible translation. I really enjoy doing this. I've been writing some Key Stage 2 lessons recently, and I did a terrible translation for 1 or 2 of them, and I was like, this is really fun, actually. Either just get them to translate it, or terrible translation. So, me encanta la Navidad. I hate Christmas. So that's obviously wrong. And what I've done as well is some hints. So the ones that are wrong on this slide are actually in bold. And when you download these resources, they come with some PDFs that have got this written out with the bold in as well. So it just helps a little bit for them to. So again, it's just adaptive teaching, isn't it? One's a bit easier, one's a bit harder. So yeah, so then they just have to correct the bits that are wrong, and that is a corrected translation. So you can go through that together and go through the answers, and then they've got the translation of the text. So this really, really helps it get, you know, really, really in depth. Then you can do a speaking activity. So talking to your partner about Christmas, ask and answer these questions. 4 questions. ¿Te gusta la Navidad? So you've got your answers here. ¿Te gusta la Navidad? Me encanta la Navidad. So, and then a reason why, like they can add a reason why onto that. ¿Qué hiciste en Navidad el año pasado? So already, el año pasado recibí un móvil nuevo. So these questions are perfectly aligned to the text they've been doing. Instead of something totally random that they've not actually covered, they've not actually done. ¿Te gusta dar regalos a tu familia? ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué no? So here you've got what you bought for your family. You haven't necessarily got your opinion about that, but it's easy to adapt the text to answer that question. And then, ¿qué vas a hacer este año en Navidad? What are you going to do this year for Christmas? This is assuming people are going to be doing these lessons over the coming weeks. So this year rather than next year. But yeah, and one of the things I was going to say about that is if you're teaching this, you know, with your classes, give the students some time to write out their answers to this. I mean, it's not a massive jump, but jumping from this text with a translation to the speaking could be a bit like, oh my gosh, right, suddenly I've got to produce some language. So give them time to write out some answers and to practice their answers before they then do the ask and answering with their partner. You can turn this into like a whole class questionnaire as well. Maybe with all 4 questions, maybe just choose 2 of them. So even just like, ¿te gusta la Navidad? And ¿qué vas a hacer este año en Navidad? I don't know, it depends if you want to practice past tense, maybe ¿qué hiciste el año pasado? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, so you could do that as a whole class questionnaire. So they write out their own answers, so they feel confident. It's all about making sure they feel confident in their speaking before they actually go ahead and say anything. So yeah, so either working in pairs. If you don't know what I mean by whole class questionnaire, I mean literally like give them 5 minutes, maybe even longer, to go around and ask as many people in the class as they can, and then they write down the answers so you know, they'll go around and say, right, Kate, ¿te gusta la Navidad? And I'll say, sí, me gusta mucho la Navidad. So then they would say, Kate, sí, mucho, or something, I don't know, making notes like that. And then they go around and ask Bob, and then Bob says, no, odio la Navidad. And it's like, oh, okay, Bob's not a fan of Christmas. And yeah, so that and then that's really good for whole class feedback as well, and saying like, So a Kate le gusta la Navidad. So who asked Kate? And then whoever asked me can answer that question on my behalf. And then you're practicing le gusta. Right? So there's lots of ways. I mean, exploited one text, and then lots of ways of exploiting each activity within that as well. So, and then this is slightly silly. Remember the phonics focus of and try to pronounce it really well. But I think that's slightly for the teachers as well to remember, like, don't overcorrect every single thing that they're saying. Remember what your phonics focus is, and just listening out for that and correcting that. And then anything, if you really don't understand what they're saying, then you correct that. And then lastly, you move on to the writing. Okay, so this is their real sort of proper production of language. I've put aim to write 80 to 90 words in Spanish. I mean, you don't have to put a word count. They can just write as much or as little, as much as they want. And I've then put these bullet points into English, but basically it's the same as these questions, really. So whether you like Christmas or not, and why. So with the answers that they've got for the speaking, they should then be able to turn that into a more, like add a few more opinions and more connectives and all that kind of stuff, and develop it into a really good paragraph, or 4 paragraphs if they want to do 1 for each bullet point, and to actually turn that into a really good task for the writing. So whether you like Christmas or not, and why, what you did last year for Christmas, a present that you received or gave last year, and all this does go back to the key vocab as well. So a lot of this stuff is there, but then there'll be stuff that they'll need to look up, and there'll be extra things as well, but that's good. It gives them an opportunity to learn some new vocab. And then what are you going to do this year for Christmas? So that's using your future tense there as well. And then at the bottom, we've got tip: use the text from this lesson as your writing frame or model answer. So give them that, and make sure that they then have, I mean, just here is probably the best one because it's got the corrected translation, that they've got that text in front of them to help them. And as I was saying with the previous PowerPoint as well, that they, oh, where have I gone? Go right back. So you're, I don't want it to
Este año
you know what happened? Shush.
nos.
Right. So actually, even just giving them the gap fill here, I would probably add a couple more gaps. So instead of me encanta, maybe they could say me gusta or no me gusta. So leave that as a gap for their opinion. And then you might want to change the gap fill a little bit for this, but just using that text as a writing frame, and then they can use it as a basis, and then find, pick some gaps, and then they can just fill in the gaps to make it true for them. That's for sort of, scaffolding students who will struggle to just write 80 to 90 words by themselves. So there we go. Oh, and my favorite game of all time, Connect 4. I'll just explain to you really quickly how to do this. So I always have to do this out of full screen mode, which I always find slightly annoying. I've never worked out how to do it in full screen mode. So basically, you split the class into 2 teams. You've got Christmas trees and presents. And so the Christmas tree person will say, I'll just take these out, right? So the Christmas tree team might say, I don't know, vamos a celebrar con mis abuelos, if they want to say a whole sentence, or just say celebrar. Again, everything depends on the level of your kids. I don't know, el año pasado recibí un móvil. So receive. So they don't necessarily have to say recibir. They could change the tense, change it, etc. And then basically what you're doing is they might then just say el día de Navidad, and then they might come over here and say la noche buena, because then they're trying to block each other. So I always do it starting on the bottom line. So it's literally like if you've played Connect 4, the little coins, as you drop it down, it does start on the bottom line. So that's why I tend to do it like that. But you can do it however you want. So in the end, they need to, just be going, right, I'll do this and I'll do this. And then they might go there, and then they might be really silly and not notice, and they'll go there and they'll be like, wow, I can get 4 in a row, and then they've won. But the idea really is to block each other and like stop each other from winning. If you want to get a bit of that in a bit more detail, last year I did a show and tell workshop about games in MFL. I explained Connect 4. It's about 1 hour and 20 minutes in, and that's on my website. So there's a link here as well. I'll pop that in. Oh no, hold on, is that going to work? Yeah, I'll just pop that into the chat as well. So that's for the games in MFL workshop. That's all free. You just have a look at that. That explains Connect 4 and various variations of that. Right, it is actually 1:45. I don't even know if anyone's still here. If anybody has any questions or comments or anything, I don't have to completely stop straight away at 1:45. So if you've got any questions or comments, then let me know. Otherwise, I will say thank you for watching and head off. And hopefully that is useful for you. So, thanks, guys. So yeah, well, yeah. And as I say, people, I've been talking about this for a little while, and people are starting to use it and finding it really, really helpful. So if you do, let me know. Like I say, I'm at Kate Languages on Instagram and Facebook. That's the best way of getting in touch with me. And let me know if you're using this with your students, and how you're getting on with it. So, thank you for the comments. But if there are no questions, I don't know. Let me double check the Q&A. No question. So if there aren't any particular questions, then I'll go. So thanks everybody. Bye.